An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 106. I'm Aaron Pollier.
I'm Darlene.
And we found an odd movie.
Odd named movie.
Okay, the whole reason we chose this was because it had a name that either raised the specter of being incredibly sexist or incredibly smutty. And that's why I had to watch it. It's The Woman Eater from 1958.
Woman Eater as a one word.
One or two words.
One word. No, one word in the UK when it was released in 1958. The Woman Eater is July 1959.
In the US?
In the US.
Okay. So this movie has some weirdness in it. And I had never seen it before. Have you ever seen it?
Nope. It's 70 minutes long, black and white.
Yeah, and it was available on Hulu for not Hulu, excuse me, Tubi for free. We both have never seen it before. We went in with incredibly low expectations.
And they have a juju.
That's what they call it. We went in with very low expectations, and I have to say that at the very least, the movie exceeded our expectations, so much so that while I'm talking right now, I still haven't made up my mind, but I think I might recommend this film, even though it's really weird. But we'll when we get to the end, I'll make my mind up. Any thoughts before we start, Darlene? As she yawns and
I've had a tiring day.
Okay. Well, what? Any thoughts? Any thoughts at all?
Not that I can.
It is a British film, so there's some Britishisms in it.
There's a pulsometer.
Well, we'll talk about that. There's some pretty awful science. Is this a Frankenstein type film? I don't think it is. Even though it has a lot of it reminds me a lot of Frankenstein films in some weird ways.
And one of my bitches with this movie, though, is that you never know who the people were. You never got the names until like some of them
near the end. Like I Dr. Moran, who is the main character, he's played by George Coulouris. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. He's the lead in this, and he's our mad scientist. The leading lady is Sally, who is played by Vera Day, and I actually ended up looking up a lot on her because...
And you found smut.
I found smut, which I shouldn't... I'll explain now. It turns out that a photographer by the name of Harrison Marks was smitten with her and decided to do a book, like a photographic study of her. And 90% of the photographs that they did together are cheesecake or very normal style photographs. But then there's things that verge on pinup and stuff that is
and then there's some nudes.
But it is a legitimate photographic study. It is not pornography. Everyone's definition of pornography is different. Regardless, it is an extremely rare book today to find, ranging from like $130 to $200, depending on the quality, because it hasn't been printed since. But the reason we looked her up is she's one of the bright points of this movie. Her acting is actually incredible.
Her voice is this cutesy... how do you want to call it? It's a cutesy but kind of
cutesy,
sexy,
girly,
but sexy on the same way.
Yeah, it's bedroom voice.
And then there's how she to the boy that she likes, which is
Jack Werner,
Jack Werner,
played by Peter Forbes Robinson, and he isn't in many things, but we'll get to that.
She puts on the sexual charm to him too.
And
really good.
Yes, and I think the movie goes a little too far in some of the scenes with that sexual charm because of the way the camera and she is framed. But again, we'll get into that. So let's talk about the plot. It is London. We see it as London. London is fairly unmistakable. A man walks into what's called the Explorers Club, and there's an older man who's talking about a culture having juju. That's what they call it. And I apologize if that is an offensive term now or anything like that. This is what they called it. That can bring the dead back from the grave. He asks the others there to go with him.
To the Amazon.
And there's one guy that says, sure, I'll go. He leaves a map for others to look at. And it turns out that this old guy that was looking for people to go is Dr. Moran. And they specifically mention after he's left that many people in his family have been put away for being crazy. Okay, so we've set up the fact that this guy is nuts or has the potential to be nuts. One or two guys from this Explorers Club decide to go with him. They go to South America, and I want to say that it feels like a generalized South American, Central American culture that they're trying to represent.
Well, the person's in headset of a chieftain, like Native American.
Well, no, it's like it looks like an Aztec type headdress or Incan type headdress. I know they're two different cultures, but I know that there was like Aztec looking things carved on some of the set.
And the ceremony came off as voodoo.
Yes, it did come across as voodoo. It was a very non-culturally specific, but maybe purposely misrepresenting something. I don't know. It felt weird. It felt like somebody hadn't done their research or was making broad generalizations about a culture. Let's put it that way. But it's England, white men going to explore the Central and South American jungles in 1950s. Of course, it's going to be a little
there's a young woman questionable in the middle of it that's being charmed, or how do you?
Yeah, okay. So there's a guy with like bongo drums, and he's just bump. Okay, I know you can probably hear that on the microphone. He's thumping on these drums, and this woman's in like a white shift, and she's swaying with like the sound of these drums. And one of these explorers, the explorers are watching this, and one of the explorers is like, "Those savages! We should stop this ceremony. They're going to kill her." And he jumps in and is killed by an indigenous person that throws a spear at him. Okay. The woman then starts to scream as she's pulled towards something that we don't yet see, presumably this tree that we see in a little bit. We should describe the monster right away, because I think there's a point right at the beginning that we do see it, and I think it's right here. And it is the monster, this woman eater, is kind of a man-sized creature that looks like a plant. It is not a Triffid. The Triffids look far better. It isn't Navy versus the night creatures.
No, it looks like it's got a lot of Spanish moss hanging from
it. Has like a lot of Spanish moss, and it has like 100 arms, and some of them are like claws, but some of them look like it has fingers. And it sits there and grapples with people.
Some of them look like mouths of a...
like a snake or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just people with their arms in these things. Like,
and it's got to be done with more than one.
Yeah, there has to be like four or five people in this. Anyway, the old explorer passes out and comes to at the base camp. And we flash forward. It says England 5 years later. Okay. So there's a man beating on tom-toms, and it looks like he's in a misty sewer. So I'm thinking, is this all going to be in like the sewers of London or something like that? No, No, it isn't, because it turns out that this old man explorer who's in his posh office upstairs opens up a door and walks into his underground laboratory where this man with bongo drums, the same man that we saw in the jungle, is sitting there beating on these bongo drums.
Tanga.
And there's, is his name? Yeah, Tanga, played by Jimmy Vaughn. He's beating on these bongo drums, and there's a woman there, and I said a scantily clad blonde woman. She seems to be hypnotized.
It looked like she was in her shift.
Yeah, again, just like the girl out in the jungle, she's in her shift, and she's swaying, and the man on the bongo drum stops, leads her forward, but she starts to struggle, and then is thrown into this plant. And we get a little bit of exposition here where Dr. Moran says he's going to get a serum to bring the dead back so this woman's death won't be in vain. And it turns out that I guess this tree, after it eats a woman,
Produces some kind of blood.
some sap or something like that, that can be then processed into something that can be injected into a dead organism to bring it back to life. So I'm thinking, okay, here's the Frankenstein angle.
It's also the voodoo angle, because you
Yeah,
also
the
had
voodoo angle.
in voodoo you had the burying them, so they
Well, the
suffocate.
zombie,
Zombie.
stuff. Well, I mean, then you also have, oh, this is going to be like a zombie movie. Is it? Not really. Well, sort of it is, but we'll get to that.
1 3-minute clip.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So now we have the man on the drums he puts on like a white footman's coat and stokes a furnace, and I guess it's to get rid of some of the body parts. I don't think the tree eats everything. I think there's like bones that are left over. It's very unclear. And all around the laboratory, this laboratory is your typical mad scientist laboratory. There's bubbling beakers. There's weird equipment. He drips liquid. He drips some liquid that he's been distilling, and it's obviously the sap from this tree. Sap, blood, fluid, whatever. And he drips it onto what looks to be a large animal heart. And it slowly begins to beat on what is called the pulsometer. Okay. Now, the pulsometer, you would think, okay, 0 to maybe 200 it should go, because your pulse, if it's beating once a second, would be 60, like 60 beats a minute. If it's really racing, 180 or something like that. But this pulsometer does not do that.
It goes up to like 600.
It goes up to like 600. Yeah, and it's always sitting there going all the way up. Whenever the heart beats, it just shoots up to like 600 for whatever reason. So it's not actually reading anything, but you can actually tell that they just wrote a tag and put it on
over electrical.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately,
amp meter, I would say.
Yeah, unfortunately, this heart beats for a little bit, then it fades, and it's clear that the serum is not fully working. We then have a cop show up at the professor's, this Dr. Moran's house. He's looking for a girl that has disappeared, and it is clearly the girl that he had just killed with the tree.
And when that's the first name we actually get.
Dr.
Which
Moran?
was Susan Curtis.
Susan Curtis, okay.
That's the victim that they just killed.
The first victim. Well, technically the second victim that we've seen. Yeah. So it's clearly the girl that was just eaten by the tree. Professor Moran, Dr. Moran says, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about."
Brings in his housekeeper and asks, have you seen a female lost wandering? And
oh, no, I haven't. And the cop's like, okay, fine, whatever. The cop leaves. He's riding like a bicycle, and we see a sign on the doctor's gate to his house that says that there's a local fun fair that's being held. Why this sign is on the doctor's gate for his manor home, I have no idea. But it
was to clue into the next scene.
So the next scene is at this fun fair, and we see a sideshow hustler is trying to convince a crowd that a blonde woman in a bikini top and like a skirt, not even a grass skirt, but a skirt, is a woman from the South Pacific and is exotic. And basically he's hawking a peep show. But this woman that's dancing is Vera Day, who plays Sally. The girl walks off, and she's clearly a local because she puts on her coat and goes to get something to drink from a stand. There's a guy that's like completely taken by her appearance because she is gorgeous. This is Vera Day. And that's our second lead, Jack Werner. The character's name is Jack Werner. He wins a prize and then gives it to her, saying that she's absolutely beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman that he's ever seen, and that he would like to take her out for a drink sometime.
And he wasn't even looking at what he was shooting.
Yeah, he was at a shooting gallery, and he was just plugging away and completely distracted by this girl because she is very beautiful. Anyway, the sideshow hustler comes out and screams at the girl to get back on the stage, but our hero gets angry with this hustler and punches him out. And she freaks out, thinking she's in trouble now because her boss just got punched the F out. Anyway,
he was defending her because the boss was
getting
a creep.
Yeah, he was a creep. So the guy leaves. She goes back to work. The next day, she comes to the man's garage because he's a mechanic to tell him that she's been fired. And you're like, well, how does she know where he works? Well, I said, even if she's just visiting this place, this is clearly like a small village somewhere. And this was a local fun fair that was passing through or whatever. And all she has to do is say, that guy that punched out my boss last night, where does he work? And somebody would know where he works and direct. Or B, she could have just probably followed him after he left because she likely immediately got fired.
But their stock footage shows a big carnival.
It's not. So he recommends getting a job with Dr. Moran. He drives her there and she asks for work. At first, Moran's like, I don't know if we need anybody. I do have a housekeeper. And she's like, is there anything I can do? And she kind of looks cute. And he's like, fine, yeah, maybe you can help her because she's getting old. And she shouldn't hear that from me because that might upset her. Okay, fine. And she's middle-aged, but regardless, it's him clearly thinking, boy, I can feed her to the tree. That's basically what it is.
And this is the next time we find out a name, which is Marguerite.
Marguerite, the actual housekeeper. Is it Marguerite?
Yeah, I think it's Margaret.
Or Miss Santer.
How he pronounces it is Marguerite.
Anyway, the police start searching the area. The professor's home is closest to where the first girl was last seen. So they come again to speak with Dr. Moran, and he lets them search the area. He's like, fine, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, search the area. I'm sure there's lots of sheds around here that she could be hiding in. And so it's like, oh, okay, maybe this he is really competent. He's actually gotten rid of the bodies really well. All right. So back in the lab, we go back to the lab, and they're making the serum to raise the dead. Dr. Moran fills a syringe, and then we flash to London. I thought there was going to be a whole scene with him trying again to raise the dead, and he doesn't. And I'm thinking, what the hell? I think there was a really weird edit in there, is what I'm saying. We go back to London. It's nighttime. It's foggy. We recognized a couple of the places from our trip there back in 2010, like Piccadilly Circus, which still looks fairly similar to what it does today. I mean, the same central like fountain statue is there, and the bright lights of it. It's kind of the Times Square of London, so to speak.
But it would be the difference. It's like Times Square, what it looked like in the 50s versus what it looks like today.
Yeah, you can still tell it's Times Square.
LEDs. Before it was neon and stuff.
You can still tell it's Times Square is what I'm saying. And you can still tell this is Piccadilly Circus. And I like that it was kind of foggy. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like London, doesn't it, with the fog? But the stereotypical London. So the professor.
But you said it wasn't the year of the fog.
It wasn't the Great Fog. It wasn't the Killer Fog.
That was in what, 52?
Oh man, I can't remember offhand. You're asking me. It was early 50s, if I remember correctly. I haven't read anything about it in a while. I just know about it. It's one of the deadliest fogs that pollution events. It killed hundreds of people and likely shortened the lives of thousands more because of the incredible pollution that occurred. Anyway, Professor follows a woman to a pub where she meets a man. The man leaves
After passing by 2 prostitutes that try to pick him up.
Yeah, and it was actually a well done scene with him walking around because the extras that were playing the prostitutes looked natural with their actions. Like they didn't look like they were acting. It was this girl kind of walking off the wall and trying to follow him for a second to like say, "Hey, I'm with you." And then he didn't give any kind of signal that he wanted to have company, and so she just kind of peeled off. There wasn't any sort of like, "Well, screw you, buddy," or anything like that. It was just like, "Okay, that he's not worth my time." And she peels back off. I thought that was actually good direction. Anyway, he walks into this pub. The guy that this woman was meeting leaves. He steps in, offers to take her to a roadhouse. She seems really into it. She's like, "Sure, I'll go." And she does. And she gets into his car and drives out into the country, which has to have been a while.
There's a cigarette or something that he gave her, and she's like,
"Yes, you know what?
drugged it.
I
Drugged
don't."
her.
She walks out of that car fine. I think she's just relaxed. What I think it was, Darlene, yes, it was a drug. It wasn't a cigarette. It was marijuana. Like it was just to chill her out enough or whatever. So she doesn't really care that she's being driven into the middle of nowhere into this creepy manor home. He takes her into the lab where his assistant knocks her out. She's hypnotized by the drumming. We see the tree monster for a bit longer, and its arms are grappling, and trying to reach for her, but it can't really walk anywhere. It's like rooted to the spot.
Well, if you look at the pictures, the vines are all over the floor of the.
It doesn't
lab.
have legs. It doesn't have legs like a triffid. It doesn't like
no,
those
but
little...
there's vines.
Yeah. So I wrote down, I thought it looks pretty good. It doesn't look amazing. It's not a triffid, but it looks pretty good. The assistant throws the woman into its arms where she is consumed. Okay, so then we get Veraday as Sally, visits the mechanic and flirts. The only thing, let's see here, what is it? The only thing for it will be for us to get married, and then you'll teach me all about cars. And during the scene, they frame her breasts very close to the lens in almost every shot, and I'm like, this got...
And he's looking up from
like the floor
of the car.
And you cannot, as a viewer, you can't avoid looking at her chest in this.
Because she's got one of those sweaters that hugs the body.
And she's arching her back. She's clearly being flirtatious and sexy with him. But it's... I don't know if... obviously she's a very attractive woman. And I just thought that it was a little weird having the way it was framed for this movie. It felt a little out of place for a movie from 1958. Let me put it that way. Because it felt like something more from the 70s in that way. Like being a little exploitative. Anyway. She goes back. She goes back to the manor home. Dr. Moran offers her the housemaid's job and is told to think it over because he can't deal with his housekeeper anymore. And I think this is just a ploy to get her to stay, because there was a conversation right before Sally left the garage where he was like, "Quit your job, come with me. I'll get you out of there. Just go and quit your job." And he offers her all this money, and that's what's causing her to pause. She's upset. She's actually a little bit frightened by the professor, and
always has been frightened by the professor.
Yes, always been. And then here is where the actual housekeeper has heard this whole conversation between him and Sally. And she's really angry, and
she gets very jealous.
Yeah,
and then you find out later that they've had an affair.
they've had an affair and they've actually both cared for each other. I would even go so far as to say they actually have loved each other, but because they're from different classes or whatever, they've just never really had a proper relationship. It's always been this thing. Well, anyway, the housekeeper is incredibly jealous and tries to kill Dr. Moran by stabbing him, but she ends up having a heart attack because, I mean, she's not a young woman, but she's not old.
I think he grabbed her throat or something.
No, she has a heart attack. She completely drops dead. It's like, he had his hand on her throat for a moment to like push her away, but the way she dies, she either stroked out or had a heart attack and just fell over. It didn't look like he was actually strangling her. To me, it came across as it was her death was honestly not his fault. The mechanic comes back to pick up Vera, and the professor says, "Oh no, she's not here. She's left.
She left at 11."
Yeah, and but he's actually keeping her trapped to feed the tree. Clearly, he shows her the tree, and the mechanic goes to tell the police. I think there's something really fishy.
But the police are already investigating the police have already left to investigate some part of the
other disappearances because they found like clothes or something
on his property.
They found like clothes or something. Like,
there was a piece of cloth that was plaid.
Yeah, and it was like this girl's dress or something. So, back at the lab, the old housekeeper is on a slab, and we see the Dr. Moran inject the housekeeper with the serum. Okay, and she rises from the from the dead, but Dr. Moran is actually shocked because it turns out that her spirit or her mind is gone. Like, she hasn't really come back from the dead. She's just kind of like a zombie. And
this is where Tango, or whatever his name is, because Dr. Moran looks at the
like, "You've cheated me.
You've cheated me," and he goes, "Didn't cheat you. It just never gave you all the secret."
Yeah, not the whole secret hasn't been given. Like, it's a secret for my tribe only. You wanted to raise the dead. I gave you that. Bringing the dead back to life, like with their mind, that's a different story, right? Like, we never made that promise. So all the housekeeper wants to do really is to kill, and she goes after Vera, and she's like grasping with her arms, kind of like this tree creature does.
Yeah, but her object is her last hate.
And she was going after Vera. Vera Day, Sally, the character's name is Sally, but she drops dead again. Like, she just kind of falls over after a little bit.
Because the serum dies out.
Yeah, the serum dies out. The police arrive. The assistant says he'll take Vera Day, Sally, and he tries to feed her to the plant, but the professor stops him. He's like, "You cheated me. No one else is going to die for a lie," basically. Tanga and the professor fight, and the professor knocks him to the ground, and he tries to like run up to get to the police.
Yes,
Dr. Moran.
because already Sally's left.
Yeah, Sally's already gone, and Tanga throws like a knife into his back.
Throws that knife that was in the doctor's office.
Yeah, throws it into his back, so it kills the doctor. But at that moment,
and that was after after Dr. Moran hosed the tree in
kerosene.
Flames.
Like, he dumped kerosene all over it, and it was just burning and screaming, and like Tanga's.
I said, "Boy, that went up in."
Yeah, and I said, "Well, it is kind of like a Triffid then. It's filled with oil or whatever." And the assistant stabs him in the back at that point, and then it just kind of goes the end. So the movie's a little disjointed at times. And I kind of felt while watching it, this movie is not good. It's not awful, but it's not good. And then I started thinking, wait a second, there's actually a lot of stuff in here that I'm going to remember. It's actually kind of gotten into my head, some of the stuff, in a good way and a bad way. And that's why I'm still kind of on the fence about recommending it or not. So let's talk about what's good in this movie. I'll always start with you.
Certain actors do good.
Which actors?
Well, your Verday.
Verday as Sally is not just a pretty face. She's fantastic.
I liked the person that was the mechanic.
Peter Forbes Robertson.
Jack, yeah.
The character's name is Jack.
I'm not so great about Dr. Moraine.
Yes, I wasn't thrilled with his performance, but the two young leads,
and then there's the housekeeper. She really did that role well.
Yeah.
I don't know if the guy that plays Tanga, just always felt creepy, his smile.
I think he did a good job with it.
If that's what he was supposed to be doing.
See, I don't think there's any bad acting in this. That's the thing. Like, there's a couple actors that I think did a really good job, and they made me laugh.
The conversation that's at the police station is kind of bad.
Yes, but I'm like, the conversations that Jack and Sally have together when they're flirting with each other, they're always really well done, and it actually does feel like there's chemistry.
And I don't know who did his mom's voice, because he says, "Mom, I'm something or other." Do they even say that there's Jack Verne's mother? Oh, I have no idea.
But anyway, there's good acting. What is there anything else that you think really worked? Worked well in this movie, like above average. I like the stuff that they actually shot on location in London, like the street stuff. But I mean, that's so minor. I don't know if I can say it actually is one of the things that worked in this movie, because it's just like one scene. I don't even really like the sets. I like the acting. That's it. Like, Sally and Jack, they're flirting together is really funny. I kind of think that the tree monster is memorable. I don't think it's great. I think it's just okay.
Better than a lot of some things, and worse than others.
I think the sexploitation type stuff with framing Vera's chest in those shots in such a way as to be unavoidably in your eyes, I think that it's weird, and it is memorable because it's just like, wait a second, is she what's going on here? But it I don't know. I'm just kind of not making sense here with this, and I apologize. There's a lot of things that are average and forgettable in this movie, but is there anything that does not work, like that fully floats down the whole? Ugh. I don't like the entire opening scene in the jungles of South America. Yeah, I thought that was all just kind of off-putting and awful.
They could have actually left it out and not had any problem.
Yeah, they could have. It could have just started in England with the guy that, and you explained that, 5 years ago he went to South America and he found a tribe and they have this weird totem thing that they call juju. And all right, fine, whatever. That would have been just as good.
See, they could have had that gentleman's club without Dr. Moran, and had these three gentlemen talking about 5 years ago and whatever happened to, Dr. Whoever.
Dr. Moran.
No, I mean...
the guy that just disappeared.
Yeah,
Yeah, he disappeared. And Moran shut himself up in his manor home.
And then Moran came back, and now he's shut up in the thing. That could have told the whole thing without having... the
weird cultural BS that they had at the beginning.
It just tacky is all I can say about it. It's tacky.
I mean, it was probably fine for the 50s, but yeah, it just doesn't feel right now.
The other thing that made me feel horrible was when Tanga said master. You're talking about in the 50s.
Yeah, because he was in like a houseman's jacket and he's a person of color, and I don't know.
It just felt
weird.
It felt gritty.
But I don't think that has like a bad reflection on the movie. You have to like watch things in context of the time. in some ways.
Yeah, but I
In
am
some
looking
ways.
at that as the
Yeah, it still
time,
felt
and
a
it
little
would have
dirty.
been awful for the UK.
I don't know. I'm not going to hold it against the movie. I don't think it, obviously today is a different world, and I don't think it's right today. But what else can we say about this movie? Like, there's only a couple things that really work. A lot of things that are average, and like just a couple things that are bad. So that's why I'm on the fence. There's a lot of things that are just like, it's okay, but it doesn't like rise to the.
If you want to, I would say this: if you want to watch a monster movie, it would be okay.
Like
If
just a
you're
simple
n-
monster movie.
If you're not looking for a monster movie,
See, I don't know. I don't even think this is really a monster movie. The monster's in like 2 scenes for just a few seconds each.
3.
Like 3 scenes for just a few seconds each. It just isn't
But
a
what
monster movie.
movies actually show their monsters?
Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Dracula.
But we've also said that not showing your monster is
Yes, but the point is that they show their monster in the first scene. We know it's always there. Like you've shown it right away. Like I think the Martians in War of the Worlds are on screen more often than this thing. I don't think the tree creature in this rises to the point of making this a monster movie. This is a mad science movie more than anything, and the tree is just there as a way to murder people. It could have been an Iron Maiden that they shut women up in and drained their blood and made a serum out of it. It's exactly the same thing. Like, and you don't need to have like Tanga beating on bongos and grinning maniacally and calling somebody master. I don't know. I guess I'm not going to recommend this.
okay.
I think there's things that work really well in it. I think Vera Day was fantastic in this. I think she was fantastic. I think Peter Forbes Robertson as Jack was fantastic in this. I like a couple of the things in it, but otherwise, yeah, it's very forgettable or weird. I found more joy finding out about this whole Harrison Marks Vera Day pictography, like photography book that was released because he was completely enamored by her. And she was in a lot of movies. That's the thing. She was kind of a starlet. So I don't know. That's all I guess I can say about it. Is there anything that you think that a modern filmmaker can learn or take away from this that we haven't really?
No.
Not really. See, it's such a very average movie in so many ways.
But it does have, we've had very average with that were unmemorable. At least this one has some
Yeah, this one
memorable.
does have some things in
For
it
the
that are
wrong
memorable.
reasons.
Well, for the wrong reasons, maybe, but I'm gonna remember Vera Day in it as like being this really cutesy, good actress. But also, I'm gonna remember her for having her breasts like framed and shot in such a really exploitative way.
I will kind of also remember Jack with the fact that when he's a mechanic, he is actually dirty.
He's dirty, and then he calms people down by going to the first aid box to get his medicinal liquor out of it to give to people.
The first time he got her coffee.
Yeah.
Next time he gets some alcohol out of
From the first aid kit.
First aid kit.
Pours her shots. Yeah, I thought that was really cute. Like, really cute. There are things that are fun in this, like that make me smile, and it's only 70 minutes. So I mean, I guess if you like British movies like this, go ahead. It's barely science fiction. There's like the whole raising the dead thing, yes, but is it really the plot of this movie? Not really. It's more about this guy killing women and getting away with it, and then this mechanic figuring it out and getting the cops involved, and then the doctor getting killed. I don't know. It's
Well, did the mechanic ever figure it out?
Well, he called the cops on him, and it did kind of precipitate other things happening. So anyway, yeah, we're kind of blah on it. It's not bad. It's not a bad movie. It's not a bad movie, folks. We're just not going to recommend
I can't recommend it, and
Yeah, I
I can't say not to.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very it's a 5 out of 10 movie. That's what it is. 5 out of 10 movie. So you're like, whatever. Anyway, we'll let you go, folks. I'm Aaron,
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
and keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.